very good evening to you and welcome to The Bottom Line, a wrap of the business news of the day. I'm Frances Hurd. And let's start with this. A foreign shareholder in the Reserve Bank has asked to respond to some statements made by the Reserve Bank governor on this show last week. Lesetja Kganyago was talking about calls to nationalise the Reserve Bank, and he reiterated the view of bank officials that this is actually being pushed by the foreign shareholders themselves instead of standing to lose. He says at the point of nationalisation, they could argue that they have a claim on the reserves of the country, things like foreign currency that is under the guardianship of the bank, and push for huge payouts. Before we speak to shareholder Michael Duerr, let's hear what the Reserve Bank governor had to say on Thursday.
This drive is not a South African agenda. It's an agenda driven by these shareholders, because at dispute here is who owns the foreign exchange reserves of the bank, and they would argue that they have got a share of these reserves, but by law they cannot quite get access to these reserves, and the only way they could actually really access these reserves is to force a contestation about the ownership, so that what would then happen is that we might end up in some international court about the valuation of the bank, and when you get there, we don't know which way it could go. It could vary from anything from 20 million rands to maybe 100 billion rands. That is the money that the country does not have. But even if the country had that money, is that money we would like to spend to buy out shareholders, or is that money we would rather spend on a hospital or a school or a road or a bridge or something like that?
So do you think those foreign shareholders, let's just clarify so no one can get this wrong, are actually pushing, maybe even behind the push for nationalisation that we're seeing in South Africa? Are they working with the politicians?
Well, they are pushing, and we saw it at our AGM. Some of the proxies that they sent at our AGM included a prominent local government politician who was a proxy of one of the foreign shareholders.
Well, German National Michael Duerr has been a shareholder in the Reserve Bank since 2006. Recently, there was in fact a claim that he owned the majority of the bank's shares that was debunked by Africa Check, confirming he owns 10,000 out of a total of 2 million shares, which gives him a holding of just 0.05%. Of course, those shareholdings for individuals are capped. Well, Michael Duerr wanted to respond. He joins us via Skype. Thank you very much, Mr. Duerr. So the governor didn't mention you by name, but he did talk about a shareholder who sent a politician as a proxy. That is you, correct?
Thank you, Francis, to have me on the show, and that I can clarify a few things. First of all, sorry, it's a 0.5% shareholding, 10,000 shares, because it's 2 million shares in issue. And we never actually wanted public money. Just for the intro with Lesetja, with the governor, we never asked for public money. We always wanted to do a private deal, which was resisted over the years from the Reserve Bank, from the legal department. And the good news is that actually for the prime news here, that we can solve the problem. Because when you ended your last week's the bottom line, you said that let's end with the hope that the worst can be prevented. And I have the news that it can, because we have a black South African businessman who is interested since around 6 weeks to buy all the shares, to mop up the 12% of the foreign shareholding, to actually get this whole thing sorted. That means no public funds needed. The only thing which is needed is the agreement that actually the new shareholders are being written into the share register of the SAB, which is until now being resisted. And after you contacted me today for tonight, I spoke again to the investor, and he's still very eager. And he said that we are interested to buy those shares of us if the country leadership blesses us to buy. That means we just need an okay from Your Excellency, from the Honorable President, and from the ANC and from Parliament, and then we could agree politically on a win-win situation.
Okay, so let's clarify this all. So you're saying you're not gunning, like the Reserve Bank governor himself said and other officials have said, for our national reserves, basically?
No, I mean, it's a little bit...
It's worth billions.
It's a little bit more complicated. I can't now in a few minutes bring down the whole legal case. I just can say that as the Reserve Bank was issued, the share capital was issued in July 1921, nearly 100 years ago, and we have the same share capital. That's the legal trick in the whole thing and the legal problem with warts and all, that we have the initial rights of the initial shareholders, and that actually makes the whole thing very critical on the legal side. But I mean, I have to say that I moved the whole thing since 2006. There were other shareholders before who moved the shareholder activism to actually flush out the nonsense. And the thing is that we achieved what we wanted to achieve, that now every South African knows about that there's a Reserve Bank. Everybody is discussing it about the mandate, because the mandate is not so clear. We had also the two public protectors, Thule and Busisiwe, involved. I definitely had loads of people involved over the years, from the COSATU side, from the ANC side, from the EFF side, from the DA side, the public protectors. I mean, so far I'm through 4 presidents, 8 ministers of finances, and 3 governors since I am a shareholder, and I saw a lot. And now I just have to say that we are not in a war, and we are not a Trojan horse. I mean, then would be a German horse, and we are not coming out as warriors. We actually always wanted to change the thing for the good, but naturally there are elements in the Reserve Bank who just detract and want to blame us on things which they are responsible for.
Okay, at what price, now considering, as far as I know, these shares are only worth around 10 Rand, 12 Rand, at what price would you be willing to sell to this local businessman or consortium? And will it work? Because we know that the shareholdings in the bank are capped, so no individual or group of people can own more. That's one of the reasons why the bank has been at odds with you in the past, because you were controlling shares through your family and friends.
I mean, that's again a lie or incorrect statement from a lot of people in the Reserve Bank. I just wanted to show you, I mean, I prepared this. There we have the Government Gazette of the Reserve Bank Amendment Act, signed on the 9th of September 2010, okay? And that's coming back to the thing that actually the president, when he was out of the country, and that's the thing with Mr. Zuma, which he is contesting too, he only signed this into law on the 12th of September, on the 12th of September. That means a few days later, after it was gazetted, I mean, there is a law which is actually unconstitutional. We never actually challenged this. I mean, there's a lot of problems in the whole legal background of the Reserve Bank Amendment Act of number 4 of 2010. And I can't go into the legal issues. I just want to say we would have a solution for it. The 10 Rand is a nonsense price, because it's actually the Reserve Bank is not a dividend stock, which is purported by many of the Reserve Bank. It's a growth stock, because all the assets which are in the bank are having been raised by the capital which has been raised in July 1921, which is owned by the shareholders, because again, the state has no share in the Reserve Bank. And when I started the process in 2006, then later on I met Tito. He came down to Cape Town. We had a talk, and I told him how I would recommend, as a former investment banker, how we would do a rights issue and get this whole thing sorted, like in the Belgian model. He didn't want to actually listen. And then I said, okay, when you don't want to privatize properly, then we nationalize. I mean, ever since I just got all sorts of leverage within COSATU, within the ANC, within the various factions.
Dear, we're running out of time. How much would you be asking for? And I want to go back in time. In 2011, at that stage, you were talking about nationalisation, saying that the shareholders would be entitled to 40% of the bank's reserves. That is why governor after governor has said you're looking at the profits here. I want to know, how much will you settle for?
We won't reveal our price because that's confidential, but I can tell you that the 40% is out of the South African Reserve Bank Act in the case when you would liquidate the Reserve Bank, which nobody would do because the reputational risk is unpayable. I mean, it's not possible. There's no circumstances in the Act what to do, how to pay out shareholders. Therefore, we never actually wanted to go for the government to pay us out. We always wanted to have private treaties, but they were resisted by the Reserve Bank because they actually just want to bugger us around.
All right, so you can't reveal the price. Finally, can you understand how South Africans could be alarmed hearing things like that, that you want the foreign reserves? Jill Marcus, one of the previous governors, said that you weren't interested in entrenching the independence of the bank. It's always been about profits. Can you understand the concern?
It was never about profits, because when I met the Honorable President Zuma in the New Dawn in December 2009, I had actually a deal with him, which was actually later on killed by the commercial banks, and that was actually resulting in Gordon bringing in a cabinet meeting and actually bringing in the Reserve Bank Amendment Act. And you need to think about it. There was no other law in South Africa which has been actually done from within 4 months, from the first public hearings in the portfolio committees until it has been gazetted and be written into law. And that should actually make people think what is actually really going on in the Reserve Bank. I can tell you there's a lot of skeletons in there. I mean, the ABSA, the lifeboat, and all the stuff is only part of it. And the SAIC's report reveals a little more. And it's not about us making the money. I mean, I at the time offered Zuma the shares. He could actually give it to Cosatu and distribute it. I just wanted the system to change. But now we have a different issue here, because Gordon played his tricks, and other people. And now we just want to have the whole thing flushed out.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening. That was a shareholder in the Reserve Bank, Michael Duerr, and we'll see if that win-win situation he's talking about, shareholders selling out to locals, gains any traction.